On today's show, it's been a busy start to free agency for the Ottawa Senators with a big trade and some additions. We'll look back at the best and worst of what we've seen so far from Steve Staios.
And we have the Sens Dev Camp roster, schedule, and the home opener game is set.
We'll get into all that and more on today's Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, and you can find the show wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to continuing the rocket ship ascension for this podcast. The biggest month in show history has come and gone, and now Steve Staios is putting in work in July. Today is Tuesday, July 2nd, and Pilsy, I made it home from Vegas.
Glad to see you made it home, Ross. I thought you were going to have to start doing shows in Vegas and you were going to be a full-time act at the Venetian and working as a bartender at the Sphere or something like that. So it's good that you're back home.
What a mess that was with WestJet. But yeah, after a couple delays, couple connections, we've made it home. And right when I got to the airport, boom, Chychrun trade goes down. I'm like, oh my goodness. So that to me is the biggest move of the day. So we should start there. You did a great job breaking it down yesterday with a quick hitter. Everyone can go check that out wherever they get podcasts. But Pilsy, my immediate reaction was, you know, the emoji where it's like all the teeth going. We were hearing prospect and a first, and all of a sudden it's a third and a guy who you're not even saving any salary on. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Nick Jensen. I think he's going to bounce back. He's a top 4 right shot defenseman. He has been for the last 5 years. So I don't hate it from that perspective. He's 33 years old. But when you're looking at Chychrun, how do you think they fumbled the value on this one?
I'm not sure, Ross. I think maybe part of it was, Steve Staios mentioned it, the market for a right-hand shot defenseman was very lean in free agency. Bruce Garriock Scoops reported that they kicked tires on guys like Matt Roy, Pesci, I'm forgetting one more, Brandon Montour. But you look at the contracts those guys signed, and clearly,
like, you're happy the Sens don't sign any of those contracts.
Pretty much, yeah, because you got to overpay in free agency, and those guys got paid. They got the bag. Congrats to them, but it wasn't going to work in Ottawa. And acquiring a right-hand shot defenseman is difficult. I wanted the Sens to trade Chychrun for picks and prospects, then use those assets to acquire a right shot guy or to sign one. But clearly that wasn't the way this was going to go down. So Steve Staios found a way to get a top 4 right-hand D, plus some draft capital. I mean, a 3rd round pick, kind of disappointing, but it's something. And that's the direction the Ottawa Senators decide to go, Ross. I think the key to this is Staios wanted to get something done before free agency, so he knew where everything was set. He knew how much money he had to play with. He knew what positions he needed and what offers he could make, and so on and so forth. So I think part of it was just, Ross, they needed to move on. They needed to figure out how they can play going forward, and that's why the deal got done, because clearly the price was lowered here for Chychrun.
Well, the further that it got, the more everyone knew it had to happen, and you're just losing a bit more leverage every day. Now, Chychrun's coming off an awful defensive season where he did tie his career high in points and played all 82 games for the first time in a long time, but it just felt like you just missed out on getting maximum value. Now, would that have been at the trade deadline or earlier this summer before the draft? Maybe, but we'll never know. All we do is that a 3rd round pick, and the Sens are cornering the 3rd round pick market. They've got Florida's in the next 2 years. Now Washington's in 2026 as well. They don't have a second, though, in 2026 from that Chychrun trade. And I don't really need to rehash all that they gave up for him, all they gave up for DeBrincat. That's the old regime, and it was a gong show with not being able to sign these players. Ultimately, they decided to move on from Chychrun, and Nick Jensen is an Ottawa Senator. Your thoughts on Jensen and where he fits in on this roster?
I think he's a good two-way, more defensive defenseman. Certainly doesn't provide a whole lot of offense, but I think where you're looking to put him is with Thomas Chabot. You're trying to find that partner for Thomas Chabot that you haven't found since Dylan DeMello's left town. And this is a guy that can play in your top four. Like, if Jensen is your fourth guy in your top four, that's fine, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. Now, Jensen is a 6'1", 205-pound defenseman. He's 33. He'll be 34 in September. So
yep.
It is funny. And our guy Scrimp put this out on Twitter saying, like, Sens need vets. And then when they sign vets, he's like, why are we getting all these old players? It's so it's so funny. There's kind of that catch-22 where you can't win either way. Now, he's coming off a fairly disappointing season, especially for his standards that he set over the course of the last number of years. A lot of his numbers are down. He's I'm trying to think of the nicest way to put this.
Okay.
He's not going to provide much offense at all.
No. I mean, but like, there's
fine.
offense there. Like, not last year, obviously a down year for him, only 14 points in 78 games. So Ross, the seasons before, 29 points, 21 points. Like, if he's in the 20s in the points and he's beside a guy like Tom Chabot that you hope can put up 50 plus points, that's fine.
Yeah, it's certainly fine. Now we're going to discuss how these D pairs can shake out later on in the summer. We want to wait till the dust settles, see what other moves. But you know that he only took 5 minor penalties last year? That's going to be a far cry from what Jacob Chychrun provided the Ottawa Senators, put them shorthanded quite a bit. I believe he was first on the team in minor penalties with, actually, I'm going to pull up the stat on that. I want to say he had
too
over
many
20.
delay of game penalties for Chicky too.
Oh, yeah. So you look at that in itself is a step in the right direction where he's kind of that, prototypical shutdown defenseman. He can hit pretty well. He's known for the reverse hit from according to some Caps fans, basically for 7 seconds a game, he turns into the best player in the league. And then after that, he's just back to his normal shape, but then he just evolved. Bang. He's right there. Jacob Chychrun took 26 minor penalties last year. So 21 more than Nick Jensen. And when you look at the Sens shorthanded percentage, I don't know how many they got scored on when Chychrun in particular was in the box, but there in itself, if he can continue that and stay out of the box, that's going to help Ottawa as well. So you're not only hoping that it's a better fit with handedness and a guy who's been able to play the right side for his whole career, but to me, this is as much of that as it is being like, yo, Shabby, no more Zaitsev, Hainsey. Name your pairing. Oduya back in the day, even, I think, for a year. That's how mad I am. I'm dropping things when I hear those pairings that Thomas Chabot's had to endure over the course of the year. Then he finally gets Zub, and then they're like, Zub's actually better with Jake Sanderson. But now it's almost like I tweeted out at Sens Central, if you like Artem Zub, you're probably going to like Nick Jensen. Very simple game. Get the puck into the hands of the carrier on that. I could see Jensen even playing a little bit with Jake Sanderson. And if that's the case, then all of a sudden you're going back to Chabot Zub, and they've had success at times in the past as well. So there's your top 4 on D. For better or worse, that's it. Nick Jensen rounds that out. Now, could they use maybe one more depth defenseman to push Tyler Clevin so it's not a guaranteed spot? They've been trying, allegedly, to move Jacob Bernard-Docker over the course of the last while. How does that fit in? Because right now, you're either playing Jacob Bernard-Docker or Travis Hamonic at your right side third pair. Is that going to be enough? And is a team that needs to take the next step going to be comfortable with playing Tyler Clevin and Jacob Bernard-Docker together as a third pair? Those are the questions that need to be answered, but the top 4 is now set on the Sens blue line. We'd love to hear from you guys what you think of the blue line with Nick Jensen added to the mix on the right side, and who should start with who. We actually tweeted that out at Sens Central. Still plenty of time to vote on that poll, and it was overwhelming in favor of Thomas Chabot. Now, I almost found that a bit interesting because Thomas Chabot needs, I say in quotations, a better partner than Jake Sanderson. It feels like whoever Jake Sanderson plays with is going to elevate their game. I don't think it's a surprise that we think Jake Sanderson's a better player than Thomas Chabot. And I mean, very high standard. So with that said, I'm surprised people weren't like, hey, give Chabot Zub. We know that he's a great partner for that. Did you think that at all? Where did you vote on this poll?
No, Ross, for me, my mindset was, why would you break up Sanderson and Zub? Like, for me, there's just no good reason to do. Well, you mentioned a couple decent reasons, but like a top pair that worked that well, I don't think you should touch that. So unless there's real issues and Chabot and Jensen just is a disaster, Sanderson, Zub, put it in stone.
Well, 82.5% of the citizens agree with you, with over 1,500 votes so far, that Thomas Chabot and Nick Jensen should pair together on day one of camp. We had some depth signings on the blue line as well. Philip Roos has been signed this morning. He's a 25-year-old, 6'4" defenseman, left shot. It's a two-way contract at an annual value of $175K in the AHL. So he's making a decent chunk of change down there. He's been a decent AHL defenseman over the course of the last few years after coming over from Sweden. To me, this screams Dylan Hetherington replacement.
And don't let Steve Stais tell you they don't care about size. 6'4".
Well, Jeremy Davies might have something to say about that. The Belleville Sens also added Jeremy Davies, who's 5'11", 190 pounds. He had 35 points last year, Pilsy, in the American Hockey League. Wouldn't that have been, as I look it up here on the fly, would it have been? Yes. That would have led all Belleville Sens in defensemen by 1 point more than Max Gannett.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought Gannett might have him beat there. Yeah, that was a nice signing. Once I kind of did a little research on Davies, and he's a Quebec kid, so it gets to be a little closer to home. So I think that was a nice little move there.
And he's taken the long road. He went 3 years in the USHL, 3 years in the NCAA, and now he's kind of bounced up and down. He's actually got a few NHL games under his belt as well. He's played 23 NHL games over the course of the last few years with the Nashville Predators, and then one game in 2022-23 with the Buffalo Sabres. So that'll be a nice addition down in Belleville to help them push forward, especially I think on the power play. He'll do some help there. So that's the blue line. Now let's look up front for the Ottawa Senators, where they made a number of additions, well, some bigger ones, let's say, at the NHL level. We'll discuss that next and wrap up today's show discussing Sens development camp. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look, guys, I love sports. I know you do too. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But playoffs, they've come and gone. MLB is in full swing, but we got fewer games all around, and the sports just aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I got to do is open the app and dream up any bet anytime I'm in the mood or feeling something that I think is going to be a hot tip. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily, so keep your eyes peeled for those. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Ross, in the dog days of summer like this, you got to start cooking up some future bets. Start thinking about long-term investments. You got to diversify your portfolio when it comes to your online sports book, and you can do that with FanDuel. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
All right, Pilsy, it is free agent frenzy, and for the first time in NHL history, over $1 billion was handed out on a single day. Capital B, billion. We saw, look, the Nashville Predators went from retool, rebuild to we're going to actually add some vets and try to make this a real show. I really liked what they did. Now, will they regret it in a few years with some of that term they gave older players? Maybe, but they got better. And a lot of teams in the Atlantic did too. Say what you want about Tampa's cutthroat mentality with Steven Stamkos, but let's not pretend like Jake Gensel isn't an upgrade on him right now. They also re-signed Victor Hedman. Lots of movement all around the National Hockey League. And it's interesting to see who's left. with so many players, right? Boom, boom, boom. It was all over the place. And Vladimir Tarasenko is the top point producer from last season without a contract. Stop me if you've heard me before, but did this not happen last year?
Who was the guy last year? DeBrincat?
Vladimir Tarasenko.
Oh, Vladimir Tarasenko. Yeah, right. Oh yeah, not DeBrincat. Yeah, it's especially after winning a cup and being a big part of that team, it's surprising. But Ross, I feel like he's probably looking for one more big ticket. I don't think him and his agent want to do the 1 year lower AAV. I think they're looking for some stability, especially he's got a young family. So he's probably looking to get one more stable 3-4 year deal. So we'll see what team matches up best for that. I would have loved to have him back in Ottawa. Probably not good chances on that, but
No.
he was the right piece at the right time there, and it just didn't work out, unfortunately.
Perfect segue into this question. Who would you rather, Vladimir Tarasenko, let's say it 2 years at $5 million, or David Perron 2 years at $4 million?
Tarasenko for me personally, but they provide different styles of games.
Funny, they both won the cup together in 2019.
Oh, true. Yeah.
With the St. Louis Blues. Breaking news, Hayden Hodgson is coming to Ottawa. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But when we talk about forwards up front for the Ottawa Senators, David Perron was the big fish in terms of the annual average. 2-year, $8 million contract, a $4 million cap hit, and he's enemy of the state. He is the guy who injured Artem Zub with that cross-check. Now, David Perron, he's known for his vision, his hard-working ability. He didn't even see Zub wasn't not one, but not two of the players that were involved in that collision. But he saw red, and he's the type of player where I think if I asked him, like, hey, you've been my least favorite player for the last number of years, do you take that as a compliment? I bet you he'd say yes, because that is what his game is centered around: competitiveness, fieriness, and standing up for teammates. And I bet you it's going to take about a week of watching him as a Senator before I become a big fan.
Yeah, I think so, Ross. I think he's one of those guys you hate to play against him, but you love him on your team.
He's Alex Burrows, like, to an extent. Like, you're hoping obviously for more production than him, but they've definitely got some similarities in terms of the pestiness that they play with.
Yeah, and I mean, like, good size, 6'1", 203, so he's certainly not small. And this guy puts up consistent points. Like, since 2016, 2017, he's put up at least 40 points all the way up to 66. So you're getting somewhere in that range. Even I think at his age, Ross, at 36, I think the style of game he plays is okay for that. Like, it's not like he's a guy that relies on his speed. So getting older isn't going to plummet his point production, in my opinion. I think on a top 6 role in this team, easily he can get 45 points. So I think that's good. He brings some leadership. He's won a cup, like you mentioned. And for everyone looking back at that Perron Zub incident, obviously it's ugly from the eyes of a Sens fan. But like I said, when I broke down the incident, and I feel like that was a very controversial breakdown for me. Half people were like, yeah, you nailed it. Other people were like, you're the dumbest person in hockey podcasting. But basically the way I saw it was, he didn't see what happened. He turns around, sees his captain on the ice, and he's like, shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that. If Brady Tkachuk is down on the ice motionless, I don't want the guys on my team on the ice to be playing nice. I want them going nuts. His wires crossed, and he was trying to protect his captain. Did it? Was it the wrong guy? And was it a wrong, vicious move? Absolutely. But if I'm a Red Wings fan, I'm like, heck yeah, that's what I want from my player. So honestly, Ross, I don't mind this deal. The key here, 2 years.
Yeah.
That's
if it was 3, you're like, oh no.
Well, only, Ross, if it's 3 and that brings down the AAV, then you're like, okay, we can work with that. But obviously you don't love that. But that's what I'm saying here. What Steve Stais did on the first day of free agency that I liked is he didn't hand out wild long-term deals. And honestly, I believe this. It's become a bit of a cliche now, but sometimes the best moves on free agency day are the ones you don't make. And we talked about him kicking tires on right shot defensemen. They got paid big time, overpaid or not. That's up to your opinion, but you don't want to be handing out massive deals to free agents that might not necessarily work out. Look at the Korpisalo signing, right? Like that was just a disaster. So I think from a safe standpoint, Steve Stais did have a good approach.
I agree with that. And Perron's a playoff performer too. Last time he was in the playoffs, 9 goals, 13 points in 12 games, 9 points in 9 games the year before. Then in the Stanley Cup winning year with St. Louis, he had 16 points in 26 games. And
he's
so
got over 100 playoff games, Ross.
Yeah, he does. And what? Only Giroux does
over 1,100 games played as well. I bet he's got more than Giroux.
So you're looking at a guy with a ton of playoff experience. Giroux at 95 playoff games, but these are two of the most elite trash talkers in the game too. So you're adding a veteran, and I think that he's going to hopefully raise the standard in Ottawa. Now there's concerns about his foot speed for sure, and he got a little juke shimmied by Lane Hudson at the blue line at the end of last season. Habs fans were quick to point that out, but I think what you're looking for with David Perron is a middle six scorer, and we said they needed that. So whether he's on the third line in a checking role, I think that if you put him and Ridley Gregg together on a line, I think that could really cause some havoc. And one other thing that's a really prominent skill set for David Perron, Max Bultman of The Athletic pointed this out. He's one of the better players in the league at protecting pucks down low. And you can think, other than Brady Tkachuk and Claude Giroux, a lot of one and dones in the offensive zone. So you're hoping that this could win some battles down low and help extend some offensive zone time. And I don't need to have my coaching license for this one. You're in the offensive zone, you're going to give up less goals at the other end. So just burn the clock, especially if you're up in the game. Just wear down the opposition. I think David Perron can do that. So do I have concerns that he's 36 years old? Yeah, a little bit. But we'll see, because the hockey IQ, the compete level, those are all elite. And if it doesn't work at all after first year, you only got 1 year term left, and you either buy him out, you do something, you figure it out. And the David Perron's contract does come with a 15-team no trade clause. David Perron is an Ottawa Senator, but that's not the only move they made up front. Coming up after the break, we'll talk about Michael Amadio. Yeah, it's me, Amadio. He's back again after playing 5 games during the COVID-shortened season with the Ottawa Senators. Once we get through our Amadio breakdown, we'll pull up the Sens depth chart as it is today with all the UFAs and Parker Kelly, who, good luck in Colorado to Parker Kelly, signed a 2-year deal at $800,000 there. Steve Stais spoke to the media. We'll discuss what we understood after hearing that conversation. And then we'll get into a little dev camp. You're listening to Locked On Senators. It's your team every day. All right, Pilsy. So the Ottawa Senators adding up front, not only with David Perron, but bringing back an old friend who had a shot of espresso here in Ottawa midway through his career. But since then, Michael Amadio has gone and spread his wings in Las Vegas. I thought his career was over when he went to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, same. And it didn't go well for him there, Ross. He only played 3 games. And
yeah, he was more of a Marlies guy.
Yeah, well, no, he didn't play a single game for the
really?
Marlies.
Sick.
And then he went to Vegas. Yeah, nice. And then things really blossomed when he went to Vegas this year and last. 27 points. This is a guy that gives you versatility, which is what you want. He can play all 3 forward positions. He can play on the power play. I feel like he's got a decent two-way game as well. This was a nice signing. Now 2.6, maybe a little rich for what I want.
Do you know what really makes me feel better about that, though? 10 minutes later, Stefan Nason got 2.75. And I think there's some comparisons between those two guys.
Definitely. Now, am I saying this is a massive overpayment? No, I would have liked it to be lower in the 2s, but if you got to pay him a little extra to get there, apparently there was lots of teams calling for him. So if you had to up the price a little to get him to come in, that's fine. 2.6 at 3 years. Yeah, I like this move, Ross, and it's good to bring someone that's already a little familiar with the situation. He's 28 years old, a guy that's won a Stanley Cup, so you're getting a little bit more experience that way.
Sneaky clutch too, man.
Yeah, so this is a fine move, and yeah, the versatility is what I like, because if there's an injury, you can bump him up the lineup a little bit, and we've seen, Ross, in Vegas, Amadio can play with star players, and they like playing with him.
Yes, they do. Now, this past season, He played primarily in a role with William Karlsson and Paul Cotter as a third line guy in Vegas. But if you go back to last year, you might remember this guy had some great chemistry with Chandler Stevenson and Mark Stone. So shows that versatility. He's going to be a great penalty killer, and he brings that element of speed as well. So I'm excited to see what's next for Michael Amadio. This is going to be the most money he's ever made in the National Hockey League. Is that going to be a little much pressure on him, or will he thrive with that? That's going to be the only question I have from it. But I'm also looking at this from the standpoint of Parker Kelly / Dominic Kubalik replacement. So they got better from that respect with the Ottawa Senators' depth at forward.
Yeah, certainly, Ross. I would agree with that.
Now, if, and again, it's day 2 of free agency, we don't know what's next. Mathieu Joseph, the rumor has been they've been trying to move him. If he gets moved and Amadio is ultimately the Joseph replacement at $300,000 less, is that an upgrade to you?
Remains to be seen, Ross. I'm a little concerned that Amadio was a big beneficiary of who he played with in Vegas. He probably won't be playing with that caliber of player in Ottawa, so we'll see. I'm not as low on Joseph as you are, so I'll say it's pretty even right now.
Okay, and time will tell for that. But Michael Amadio is bringing his talents to Ottawa, and I think him and Pinto would be a great one to punch on a line as well, and maybe even killing penalties together, that sort of thing. But another guy where his versatility of playing all 3 positions and up and down the lineup, similar to Perron, Steve Staios said as much, where it's like, hey, he can play in so many different areas, play both wings. And another thing that's sneaky about adding Michael Amadio to the mix here is he's a right shot, and the Senators were very left shot heavy in the NHL last season and really the last couple of years. So not only that, they're adding 2 right shot guys with David Perron coming in as well. So balancing out the forward group from that aspect. The final piece, and you talked about this, so we don't really have to get into it, but Noah Gregor just brings that element of speed on the 4th line. He's not going to be a star by any means, but he could be a solid depth piece to chip in on the penalty kill, basically replace Parker Kelly in that role. So there you have it. Those are the moves the Ottawa Senators made on day 1 of free agency. Was it busier than you thought it would be?
No, this is about what I thought, Ross. I'll be honest, that none of these guys were really on my targets, but it's the right type of players and certainly not the wrong type of deals, which is honestly what you want in free agency. Right type of players, not wrong type of deals. And they did that. And Ross, I mentioned this to you, but I'll say it to everyone else. If you're looking at the moves the Sens made in day 1 of free agency and you're underwhelmed, disappointed, chill out, relax. The only thing that really brings me resolve, well, I'm not even that disappointed. So I won't say I'm in that group with Sens fans that are just outraged and disappointed. Just remember that this team has Linus Ullmark. Like, having a Vezina winning goalie is so massive and was the biggest piece of the puzzle for this Sens team for probably since we've been doing this podcast, Ross. God. It was so clutch for them to do that, to get rid of Corpy. All the other pieces are going to fall into place. So if you're one of those fans that's pissed off or underwhelmed, we got our goalie. And I think that's the biggest issue that the Senators had.
The Ottawa Senators also got their AHL enforcer after losing Boko Imama to free agency to the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Ottawa Senators have signed Hayden Hodgson, a 6'2", 210-pound winger out of Windsor. Played for Leamington. Shout out Dr. Bob. Leamington Flyers in the GOJHL. But do you know why I know the name Hayden Hodgson? And you might remember this too.
No, I don't.
He drilled Mark Stone in preseason. You remember? And Stone after the game went on a rant of how much of a joke this guy is. Well, we got him.
Love that,
dude.
Love that.
I just watched the hit, clean hit, but
you don't do that in the preseason like that, or you should.
Or do you? It's a rivalry game, man. He's trying to earn a spot. He got a name for himself. We're talking about it 2 years later.
Look, I don't blame him for trying to do that, but oof, that's a bold move. He's bold.
Last year, he had 16 points in 49 games in the AHL, 116 penalty minutes. And then in 7 playoff games, 1 goal, 30 penalty minutes. So there's your Boko Imama replacement for the Ottawa Senators. Now, in the final game, he had 1 goal and 15 PIMs. Have a night for Hayden Hodgson.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's fun, Ross, but I say it all the time. It's a damn shame they didn't re-sign Imama. He's a fan favorite in Belleville. And the thing, you can't just, for an AHL team to be successful, you can't just have it as a feeder farm system. You need to excite fans and have a reason for fans to cheer for the Belleville Senators, not just feel like they're just giving all their excitement to the Sens whenever they need them. And that was a missed opportunity, in my opinion.
But you do need an enforcer in the AHL. Just that
That's what I mean. They should have just kept Imama back.
I agree. Kyle Dubas saw him in a Sens jersey at the end of the year and said, I need that guy. Had to have him. You see, he's bringing back old Leafs guys, Mac Hollowell, other guys. It's so funny, man. He is the most predictable GM now that Pierre Dorion is done. So let's recap where we are for the Ottawa Senators right now. The depth chart, of course, in red. Shane Pinto, there was a lot of noise about him yesterday. We don't have to get into it because we confirmed yesterday he has not asked for a trade. Steve Staios, half an hour later, coming out, he goes, yeah, I saw reports and they were refuted. Shout out the streets. Martian had that one as well, that Shane Pinto. But I am hearing this contract is miles apart, like not even close. Now, I see both sides of it. And we've discussed ad nauseum where Pinto sees everyone around him getting paid. His production has been good when he's in the lineup. But the team's like, dude, you've been in the league for 4 years and you've missed like 3 of those years on the contract. You've barely fulfilled. Burning a year, injury for the shoulder for the whole year, and then a 41-game suspension. Like, I get that. But I also know the skill that Shane Pinto has. And Steve Staios, steady as can be, shot down the rumors and then just said Shane knows what I think of him as a player. So they can't fumble this one. That's all I'm saying. They cannot fumble this one. And right now the Senators have about $4.4 million in cap space. So do they have to make more room or can they flex and get Shane Pinto in? If they can get Shane Pinto at under $4.4 million, that's a huge win for the Ottawa Senators. But as it stands right now, you add Perron and you add Amadio in the middle six and you add a fourth liner in Noah Gregor. Now, we've also pulled up, I'm not going to go through the whole list because we're going to talk a little dev camp soon, but if you watch on YouTube or go to Twitter, I posted the whole depth chart as well. So this is how the Senators roster is shaping up front. Is there anything to you left to do up front for the Ottawa Senators?
I would like to sign another fourth line guy, Ross. McEwen as an extra, I think is where you want him. A guy that I'm targeting, Ross, I would love for the Sens to get Sammy Blais from the St. Louis Blues. He's got offensive upside. He's got good size. I think he's like 6'2", 204, something like that. And he's one of the most physical players in the league. So Sammy Blais, I think, would be a great addition. And you could get him for probably $1 million. So I think that would be a tidy piece of business.
I mean, the offense kind of dried up big time, right? Like,
but he's got offensive upside. It's there.
Dude, he had 1 goal in 53 games last year.
Look at the year before.
Well, remember, he stunk with New York. He had 0 goals in 40 games the year before, but then he went to St. Louis and had 9 and 20 points in 31 games. So
20 points in 31 games is pretty impressive.
Well, it's better than the 5 and 40 he had with the Rangers. Like, let's not just omit the first half of his season. So, no, I like him as a fourth line guy, but I don't even think I'd give him $1 million. I think I wrote in my notes when I went through all the teams and who was available, I said he could be a two-way guy if he wants to come closer to home. But I get what you're saying. Add a little bite, a little jam. But don't you think the organization would prefer to get a look at Cruikshank and Ostapchuk? Because for me, those two are ready to make the jump. Like, Crooker's 25 years old. To me, Cruikshank should be the guy. Cruikshank, to me, might be able to beat out Noah Gregor for ice time this year.
I agree with you, Ross, but I think it doesn't do Cruikshank or Ostapchuk much good playing him 8 minutes a night.
Right. Well, at some point, though, you deserve to be an NHLer. And to me, that's what Cruikshank's at. So if he has to be on a fourth line, hey, within a game, you can adjust and put them on the penalty kill. We know Cruikshank's just never going to cheat you for effort. So I think that's where I would lean. I think I'm set with this forward core, and I think I'm looking at Cruikshank to knock out McEwen of the lineup just with his skill. And we know how high the organization is on Zach Ostapchuk. So if they move Joseph, all of a sudden Greg goes up and plays the wing, and then Ostapchuk can be your fourth line center. As much as I think Halliday could use another year in the AHL, heck, if this guy continues his upward trajectory, maybe he comes into camp and steals a spot. Who knows? But this way, there's at least a little flexibility to get one of your prospects up and at it in the lineup, and then we'll see where they go from there. All right, Pilsy, to the back end we go now as a reset. The Sens defensive depth chart as of today: Sanderson, Zub, Chabot, and darn it, this one, Nick Jensen, and then Tyler Kleven with Jacob Bernard-Docker, Travis Hammond at the extra in Belleville. I think this is set. I don't think they're going to be adding anything else on the blue line, and it makes me a little bit nervous, that right side at the NHL level. I don't know if maybe Martin Paolo comes in and snags that job out of camp. Who knows? I like what I saw from Martin Paolo. But to me, if Tyler Kleven is going to make this team, and all signs point that he should, based on his composure that he showed this past season and the consistency, I'd like to see him with a more stable veteran. And he's had so many reps with Martin Paolo last year in the AHL. I think that might be a sneaky move if they're able to get out from JBD and his contract. Or JBD just has a big summer, and I mean, he's closing in on 100 NHL games. Like, they're going to have to get a bit more from him if he's going to be an everyday NHLer.
Yeah, JBD is so interesting, Ross, because I think he's a good player and he's on the right path, but I don't like the idea of him and Kleven together. I don't think that's good for either of those players. Unfortunately, they've tried him with Chabot, which was kind of JBD's destiny, was to be Chabot's partner. Hasn't exactly worked yet. Maybe they give that another shot here. I think, Ross, you're probably looking like Matthew Joseph, I don't think is going to be here when the season starts. It seems like the Sens are really trying to move on from him and free that cap space up. I wouldn't mind if they try to get another veteran right-hand shot guy, like just throwing it out here. Like, what about like a Kevin Shattenkirk on like a 1 or 2 year deal to play on that bottom pair with Kleven? And then, Ross, if you lose Joseph, then you bring Crooker up to play on that third line. Like a third line of Crooker, Pinto, and Amadio. That's a nice mix, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that right now, though, like, I think Belleville might need one more right shot defenseman. I'll say that then.
Yeah,
because
you can figure that out and clean that up, though.
Unless Roos or Amara, one of those guys is going to play the right side ultimately, I think they need to add one more right shot defenseman in Belleville to set this thing up. Because now that you've made the playoffs once in Belleville, let's continue it. Why not?
I'm down.
They're spending money down there. They are. They've had a lot of guys making 150 plus.
And Ross, they've shored up their coaching staff as well.
Yes, and that was a Brantford connection. I don't want to get the name wrong. It was Andrew McDonald.
I gotta double check.
Yeah, they hired two assistant coaches here to the Belleville Senators, and they're both Ontario guys. And I know one, McDonald, is from the Brantford Bulldogs. He was their assistant coach when they won the OHL championship. It is Andrew Campbell. Andrew Campbell. Old McDonald had a farm, but Campbell is always reliable. Stephen Legion is the other one that's going to be there. I believe Stephen Legion used to play World Juniors, if I'm not mistaken. Back in the day, I think he was a robust winger, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, U20's assistant captain in 2008. Why I know that? No clue. But these are two young up-and-coming coaches. They're both in their 30s, so they'll help out on David Bell's coaching staff.
Yeah, and that's good. I think Belleville's in a really good spot. They've done a really good job to bring back some good players for them. Yeah, Ross, it's going to be interesting to see how things shake up here, because I think this team is pretty much set. But if they decide to move on from Joseph, that's going to give them some room. Or, Ross, maybe moving on from Joseph just strictly clears up money to get that Pinto deal done, which would also be a good move.
Feels good to spend. Hey, feels good to spend to the cap, though. It's a lot different from the old days where we were like, hey, do we have to sign Tyler Ennis to get to the floor? How do we do this? So
yeah, honestly,
that is nice. Now, one of the best parts of the season, in the summer at least, is Dev Camp. And that's underway starting today through Saturday. Through Friday, and on Friday it's going to be a 3-on-3 tournament, but only for season ticket holders. I don't know if I love that move, because that was always one of the coolest events. 2 of the practices are open. The whole schedule is at Senators website, but I found that to be a bit of a peculiar move, but the roster also came out for it. And I'm looking at this roster, and I mean, there's some guys who I'm excited to see. You obviously are hoping to see growth from Stephen Halliday. This will be his final development camp. He was awesome last year. So Stephen Halliday will be in the mix. Look at it. He's listed at 6'4", 215 now. So he, to me, is the guy to watch here.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't think we need to really go through every single name on this list, but another guy didn't skate every time last summer due to a nagging issue, but Oscar Pettersson, to me, after coming over to North America, he's gotten acclimated now. It's already now his third development camp. Let's see him push the pace. And then, of course, you're excited to see all of the recent draft picks like Blake Montgomery, Javon Moore, and Lucas
I'm excited
Salinas.
for those guys. Yeah,
they're all going to be there up front. Is there another forward you'd like to highlight as a guy you're looking forward to? A lot of 7th round picks here.
Yeah. No, those were the guys I wanted to mention, Javon Moore and Blake Montgomery.
Only one player, Oliver Johansson, was drafted in the top 100 of the NHL draft.
Wow. Yeah, you're right.
I don't know what that tells me. But on the back end and in goal, it'll be the first look at Carter Yakimchuk. There's a high pick, by far the highest pick in this entire
not even close
development camp. Yeah, the second highest is the second highest guy from that draft.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, you're right. Yep.
Yeah. Gabriel Eliasson, 39th overall. Now, with Eliasson, it's wild to still see that he's 17 years old. Like, that's all. Say something nice about Eliasson. That's wild. And I had a little chat with Eliasson as well. I think we're going to get him on the show too. He is personality plus too. So I like that guy. I'm rooting for a Pilsy. Get the jersey in the heat press, buddy. 100 games coming soon for Gabriel Eliasson, but 6'7", 207 at 17 years old. Absolutely wild. Who on the back end are you looking forward to seeing?
Yakimchuk is for sure the top guy. You want to see what he can do. You want him to impress.
Give me a dark horse.
Hoyt Stanley.
Hell yeah.
First pick of that draft. We interviewed him at Dev Camp. Really good kid. He's a guy that I think has sneaky potential, and like 6'3", 198 pounds. I'm very interested in Hoyt Stanley.
Okay, I'll go with Jorian Donovan coming out of his junior career, right? These are guys where it's their last development camp. They're turning pro. So I'm excited to see him. Philip Nordberg, 6'5", 215. He's listed at now. And he'll be a good shepherd for Gabriel Eliasson. Those two are buddies, so he'll be able to kind of show him the ropes there. And then Jabril Toure, again, a guy who went back for his overage season. These are guys who are signed, and they're going to be in Belleville. So I want to see Toure, Hamara, and Donovan be leaders out there at this camp. I expect them to really compete against each other for their hierarchy as they turn pro. So I'm curious to see how that all shapes out. In goal, it'll be Vladimir Nikitin, our guy. His first time in Ottawa. That'll be really cool. He's going to be playing in the not the KHL, underneath it, the VHL, is it? Or no, the MHL. It's a junior in Russia, and he's playing for the Kazakhstan team, but he's going to be ready to come back here for World Juniors. I'm glad that he's able to get his visa sorted. He was not at development camp last year after the draft. Michael Simpson signed out of London in a one-way Belleville contract. He'll be there. That's a good guy to look. And then Levi Marilainen, who will now be wearing number 39 after Linus Ullmark took 35. So 39 for Levi Marilainen.
Love it.
Again, this guy played a full pro season. And with goalies, right, they need the number of goalies, and obviously they develop a little bit later. So Levi Marilainen will be back. He's another guy where, to me, this guy better be the best guy on the ice in terms of the 5 goalies, and it should not be even close. He, to me, is going to be the player to watch outside of Carter Yakimchuk, who's obviously the guy at 7th overall. So all in all, a lot of late picks, a lot of mid-round picks, and some undrafted players coming to this development camp. It's not the same as it once was when you had, 3 first-round picks in 2011. And I know there was no development camp in 2020 due to COVID, but there's been years where maybe there's a few bigger names. But in terms of the guys who are in their final year turning pro after this, it's going to be interesting to watch their development. We're looking forward to all the reports we get from our boots on the ground citizens. Please reach out to us at Sens Central. We'd love to see all the video and hear your opinions of these players if you do make it down to either of the open practices that the Senators will be having at the Sensplex. And make sure to tag our guy at Sens Prospects as well. All right, Pilsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
Ross, I came prepped with two final thoughts. First off, somebody get a dish of birthday cake for the disher. Happy birthday, Stephen Halliday. We love to see that. And Ross, we now know the Ottawa Senators home opener. It is October 10th versus the Florida Panthers. Ross, if you gave me my choice of 31 teams to play against the Panthers in the home opener, the Panthers would have been the team I would least like to see. I am so nervous that our home opener streak is in jeopardy.
I have the perfect antidote for that.
Well,
something that you and I talked about in private this weekend, but I'm just going to go out and say it.
Whoa.
Timmy should drop the gloves with Matthew Tkachuk in the home opener. Set the tone.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Set the tone, pal. He already thought Sanderson.
Ask David Pasternak how that went.
Yeah, true. Timmy has to fight for Brady next year. That's all I'm saying. So why not make it? Why not make it in game 1 against the defending Cup champs? You know what all spins on this, though, Pilsy? Hey, you got to play them eventually. They've had our number the last couple of years. Ever since Brady's better chance, I think they're undefeated against Ottawa.
Yeah, Ross, you got to play them eventually. Yes, for sure. Any of the other 81 games, I would rather play them. But hey, the home opener is absolutely electric, so it's going to be a fun time either way. And I gotta be more optimistic and positive about this. But in all, that's a tough matchup.
October 10th, the Ottawa Senators will host the Florida Panthers, and the Senators just posted our guy Matthew Perry. They do such a good job there. That video, the Scouts video, the the Ocean's 11 was pretty cool spoof. They just put a VCR thing in saying 2024-25 Sens schedule release. So we're going to get the entire schedule coming soon. I hope it's a back-to-back on the home opener. I believe so. I hope it's all back-to-back because that was fun, or at least 2 games because we like coming to both of them in that.
Ross, remember when it was late November and we proclaimed, or something like that, and we proclaimed that the Senators were playing their first back-to-back, and then people commented, yo, you guys were at the first back-to-back at the start of the year. Weren't you guys at both games?
Yeah. Yes, we were.
Oops.
Oh my goodness, I forgot about that. That is all-time funny. Yeah. So, hey, the Sens are 3-0 in their last 3 home openers since COVID. And one thing that's also good to know, because I remember, was it 2 years ago? They played in 3 home openers, and it's just you got to wait. They do all the introductions. The Senators are playing in nobody else's home opener. So there you go.
Nice. So other teams don't have a hard match for their home opener. That's nice for them.
Yeah. Isn't that nice for them? Schedule release is going to be fascinating because obviously the building is unavailable during Christmas when the World Juniors are in Ottawa. So where are they going to spread those games out? Where's that road trip? Will that be a California swing? Who knows? We'll find out sooner rather than later, and we'll have that all for you at Sens Central on Twitter. Pilsy, what a weekend it was in Vegas. We got lots of content out. We got our biggest month ever, and it was great meeting all sorts of Sens fans, from Chris Crawford to Anthony and a whole lot more. Just being able to do the pilgrimage to the Venetian, from the Venetian into Sphere, all together with Sens fans. It was amazing. Eric and I actually hung out yesterday too, before I had to go. So 2 days ago when all my flights got canceled. Thanks, WestJet, again. But made it home, had an amazing experience, and the draft is not only must-see TV, and I've got it on the PVR. I'm going to scroll through it. And I clicked on the Yakimchuk video. Can't play it because of copyright here. But go listen right when you click the video. You can hear Pilsy and I screaming, go Sens, go, from the 300 level at Sphere.
That's awesome.
Awesome time. So always a blast when we do these trips, and it's not going to be the last draft that we get to. So now that we've been to a draft, been to home opener, we've been to different games, been to road games, playoffs. Please. Senators have more work to do this summer, though. We'll have you every step of the way. Tomorrow, we'll get some info from development camp. We've also got some big interviews planned for later on this month. We are your team every day here, 5 shows a week. We'll break down the drafts, each pick, and we'll do prospect profiles on them. I'm going to make the graphics and everything. Obviously, when we're live, it's immediate reaction. It's how are we feeling? But we'll have a more, how do we say this? A more thoughtful discussion after development camp once we have more information of how they look in a pro setting. So that's all coming up soon. We appreciate everybody for liking, watching, subscribing to the podcast. It does mean a lot to us. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.